So far, we've been talking about basic genetics, where there are two alleles, one is dominant and one is recessive. The dominant can mask the recessive, so when they are paired, the dominant is expressed, but the recessive is hidden. And the recessive is only expressed when there's two recessive alleles and the dominant is absent. But if you think about most human traits, many traits don't follow that basic inheritance where there's only two possible ways to have it expressed. So for example, human eye color, there's not just two eye colors, or our skin tone or height. There's much more variety. So there are many exceptions to the rules, and those exceptions to the rules are called patterns of inheritance. So these patterns of inheritance are going to show that traits are not always inherited in that straightforward fashion that Mendel discovered, if you remember hearing a little bit about Gregor Mendel and his pea plants. So the first pattern of inheritance is called incomplete dominance. In incomplete dominance, we have two different alleles, but one is not dominant over the other. So if we have the two different alleles paired, we don't have one that masks the other. So in this case, the heterozygous genotype, which is when we have two different alleles, usually that looks like capital T, lowercase t. That gives us an intermediate or mixed phenotype. So it's a combination. We don't have just one expressed while the other is hidden. So here are some examples of incomplete dominance. Snapdragon flower color is a good example of incomplete dominance. Snapdragons can be red, their flowers could be white, or if we have the heterozygous, we have a combined pink. So you can see in the first generation here, we have a white flower, which is homozygous, lowercase r in this case, and a red flower, which is also homozygous. If we cross our red and white flower, we're going to end up getting all heterozygous pink flowers, because the heterozygous gives us a mixed phenotype, not one dominating over the other. Notice if we cross that generation to pink flowers, we could end up with white flowers, pink flowers, or red flowers. If you were to look at a Punnett square where you cross the heterozygous big R little r with another heterozygous big R little r, you would see you could get about 25% of the homozygous little r, about 50% heterozygous pink big R little r, and about 25% that would be homozygous red. Our next pattern is called codominance. So in this case, we have two alleles, but they're both dominant. Remember, when dominant is present, dominant will be expressed. So if both are dominant, then both will be expressed, keeping their own phenotype. So we end up getting kind of combinations here. Instead of mixtures, we have two things show up. So in the case of this flower, this is not a snapdragon, this is a different flower, the pink is one dominant color and the white is another. So this plant is heterozygous codominant, and it's showing both of those colors, the pink and the white in the flower, instead of mixing. Human blood type is another example of codominance when we talk about blood type AB. So AB blood type means an individual has protein A, but they also have protein B. A and B are both dominant, so they are codominant. In this chicken, we say this is a checkered chicken. Black feathers and white feathers are both dominant. So this chicken inherited black feather gene from one parent and a white feather gene from the other parent. So he is heterozygous codominant, or she is. Multiple alleles means we have more than just two alleles. So far we've seen a dominant and a recessive. Now we're going to have either multiple dominants and a recessive, or one dominant and multiple recessives. You still only get your pair that will determine your trait, but there's more possibilities. So blood type was a good example of codominance with AB blood, but it's also an example of multiple alleles, because A is one allele, B is one allele, but O is another allele. So we have three different alleles, three different genes, possible variations of the gene, I should say, for blood type. Eye color, so brown is a human eye color, green is a human eye color, and blue. So we have more than two possible alleles. Your combinations will give you various colors potentially for eye color. Bunny fur is another good example. There's lots of variety with bunny fur color. There are more than two possible alleles, multiple alleles. Polygenic traits, take the word apart. Poly means many, genic refers to genes. So now we have many genes. It's not just one spot, say a spot on chromosome 5 that codes for a particular trait, but maybe multiple genes on multiple different chromosomes that all contribute to the same phenotype, one particular phenotype. So we're going to end up seeing lots and lots of possible phenotypes or ways this trait can be expressed because there's so much variety and variation. So think of a trait where we have lots and lots of variety, where it would be hard to list all the possible phenotypes or expressions of the trait, like human skin color. We have very, very dark skin color, we have very, very light skin color, and everything in between because there are many genes. So we can add up all of those genes together to see what the possible phenotype is. Human height's another good example. We have very, very tall people, we have very, very short people, and we have everything in between. So lots of variety means a polygenic trait, which means there are lots of possible genes that all contribute and add up to that particular trait. All right, and finally, sex-linked traits. These are traits where the gene that codes for the trait is not found on just any chromosome, it's found specifically on the sex chromosomes, the X and or Y chromosome. So these genes are found on either an X or a Y. Remember, X chromosome and Y chromosome carry different information. So if it's found on the X, it won't be on the Y and vice versa. So sex-linked traits tend to be on the X chromosome. There's lots more genes on the X chromosome. And they also tend to show up more often in men. They're usually recessive. And remember that females have XX while males have XY. So males only have one X. So since they only have one X, they only have one gene for that trait, and therefore only need one recessive allele for the trait to be expressed. It looks a little interesting how we show our genotypes because now we have to include the chromosomes, the sex chromosomes. So XX and XY, and the genotype, the letters, are written above. So here are some examples of sex-linked traits. Colorblindness is a good example, as well as hemophilia. So this is a colorblindness test. You can see if you are not colorblind that there are different colored dots here. So some are green and some are red in various colors of green and red. Someone who is colorblind has a difficult time distinguishing the colors. So someone who is not colorblind can tell there's a number 4 here and a 5 here, so the number 45 appears. Colorblindness just means that the colors look very similar. It does not mean the individual sees in black and white. But what's important here is we can see more often men are colorblind than women because the gene that codes for colorblindness is found on the X chromosome. So a man only needs to inherit one recessive allele to express colorblindness, where a woman needs to inherit 2. In cat fur color, a calico cat, so this is a calico cat because the cat has both black and orange fur color. Calico cats are always female because the gene that codes for this fur color is on the X chromosome. And the black and orange fur color happen to also be codominant. So for both of them to be expressed, the cat needs to have 2 X chromosomes, one that has the orange gene and one that has the black gene. So all calico cats are always female. The important thing there, again, is that the gene coding for the trait is found on the sex chromosome and therefore it is sex-linked. Makes it a special trait.